hate against white.
How you doing, Greta? How you doing? How you doing? How you doing, Greta?
Statements of Reverend White are hate against white. Statements of Reverend White are the statements are hate. Statements of Reverend White are hate. Statements exact.
How you doing, Greta? How you doing, Greta?
Words and ask you again whether the statements of Reverend White are hate against white.
Thank you. How you doing, Greta?
I'm going to play those parts of his sermons. Reverend Wright's exact.
I think these civil rights leaders are nothing more than racist. They're keeping their neighborhoods and their African-American brothers enslaved, if you will, by continuing to let them think that or force them to think that they're victims, that the whole system is against them. Articulate it better, Sean. It's so sad to me.
We can't even say you're articulate. We can't even give you guys compliments.
Half of the kids in this country under 5 years old are minorities. White people are having fewer. Put it bluntly, we need more babies.
And then we'll go from there.
All right.
And then we'll go from there.
All right. All right. All right.
This government lied about their belief that all men were created equal. The truth is they believed all white men were created equal. The truth is they did not believe that even white women were created equal in creation nor in civilization. The government had to pass an amendment to the Constitution to get white women to vote. Then the government had to pass an equal rights amendment to get equal protection under the law for women. The government still thinks a woman has no rights over her own body, and between Uncle Clarence, who sexually harassed Anita Hill, and a closeted Klan court that is a throwback to the 19th century, handpicked by Daddy Bush, Ronald Reagan, Gerald Ford, between Clarence and that stacked court, they're about to undo Roe versus Wade, just like they're about to undo affirmative action. The government lied in its founding documents, and the government is still lying today. For every one Oprah, a billionaire, you got 5 million blacks who are out of work. For every one Colin Powell, a millionaire, you got 10 million blacks who cannot read. For every one Condoleezza Rice, you got 1 million in prison. For every one Tiger Woods who needs to get beat at the Masters with his cat blazing hips, playing on a course that discriminates against women. For every one Tiger Woods, we got 10,000 black kids who will never see a golf course. The government gives them the drugs, builds bigger prisons, passes a 3-strike law, and then wants us to sing God Bless America. No, no, no. Not God Bless America. God damn America that's in the Bible for killing innocent people. God damn America for treating us citizens as less than human. God damn America as long as she tries to act like she is God and she is supreme. I am sick of Negroes who just do not get it. Hillary was not a black boy raised in a single-parent home. Barack was. Barack knows what it means to be a black man living in a country and a culture that is controlled by rich white people. Hillary can never know that. Hillary ain't never been called a Hillary has never had her people defined as non-person. Hillary ain't had to work twice as hard just to get accepted by the rich white folk who run everything, or to get a passing grade when you know you are smarter than that C student sitting in the White House. Oh, I am so glad that I got a God who knows what it is to be a poor black man in a country and a culture that is controlled by and run by rich white people. Hillary is married to Bill, and Bill have been good to us. No, he ain't. Bill did us just like he did Monica Lewinsky. He was riding dirty, but he fixed this. So some of y'all are now riding pretty. Money talks and BS walks.
How you doing, Greg?
Play those parts of his sermons, Reverend Wright's exact words, and ask you again whether the statements of Reverend White are hate. The statements of Reverend White, and whether the statements of Reverend
How you doing, Greg?
again whether the statements of Reverend White are hate words, and ask you again whether the statements of Reverend White are hate against White.
How you doing, Greg? How you doing? How you doing? How you doing, Greg?
Statements of Reverend White are hate against White. Statements of Reverend White, whether the statements are hate. Statements of Reverend White are hate. Statements exact
How you doing, Greg? How you doing, Greg?
words, and ask you again whether the statements of Reverend White are hate against White.
Thank you. How you doing, Greg?
I'm to play those parts of his sermons, Reverend Wright's exact words, and ask you again whether the statements of Reverend White are hate. The statements of Reverend White, and whether the statements of Reverend
How you doing, Greg?
again whether the statements of Reverend White are hate words, and ask you again whether the statements of Reverend White are hate against White.
How you doing, Greg? How you doing? How you doing, Greg?
Statements of Reverend White are hate against White. Statements of Reverend White, whether the statements are hate. Statements of Reverend White are hate. Statements exact
How you doing, Greg? How you doing, Greg?
words, and ask you again whether the statements of Reverend White are hate against White.
Thank you. How you doing, Greg?
I'm to play those parts of his sermons, Reverend Wright's exact
Times they called him that, cause he's black but not authentically. Some say Barack's articulate.